Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, hear me today. There comes a moment in every life when standing still is no longer an option. A moment when God whispers into your spirit, move, step, go forward, not because the ground behind you is comfortable, but because the future ahead of you is calling your name. Some of you have been praying, Lord, show me your presence, reveal yourself to me. But God is saying, I'll meet you in the motion. I'll reveal myself in the step you haven't taken yet. You've cried enough tears, you've rehearsed enough fears, you've replayed enough memories that no longer serve you. Now it is time to step forward. The presence of God is not a distant dream. It's not locked behind church walls or tied to spiritual moments you once had. His presence is here, alive, waiting for a courageous heart to say, Lord, I trust you enough to move. When the children of Israel stood before the Red Sea, God didn't part the waters while they stood still. No, he waited for a step into the impossible, a step into the unknown, a step that said, even if I can't see the way, I trust the one who made the way. Some of you are standing before your own sea, a sea of doubt, a sea of pain, a sea of lack, a sea of fear. But hear this, the sea won't move until you do, the chains won't break until you step. The door won't open until you walk toward it. You've been waiting on God, but maybe, just maybe God has been waiting on you. Child of God, take that step. Forward is calling you. Forward is where healing is. Forward is where clarity is. Forward is where your purpose awakens. And when you step, heaven responds. Grace surrounds you. The presence of God floods every place your foot touches, because God has never abandoned a moving believer. He fills the space where faith walks. He covers the path where courage rises. He meets you in the middle of the motion. So today, let this be your moment. Shake off the hesitation. Silence the fear. Lift your head, square your shoulders, and declare, this is my time, this is my step, and God is with me. Take that step forward and experience the presence of God like never before. The break, through your longing for, the change you've prayed about, the transformation you've been waiting to see. It all begins with a single step. Not a leap, not a sprint, not a dramatic display of strength, but a simple, intentional step that says, God, I trust you enough to move. We often imagine that divine encounters happen only in the middle of miracles, but the truth is that God frequently reveals himself in the quiet courage of forward motion. Faith doesn't flourish in comfort. It rises in the unknown, in the places where your fear tries to keep you still, but your spirit refuses to remain stuck. Many people miss their moment not because they lacked faith, but because they never activated it. Faith is not a feeling, it is motion. It is the decision to move even when your knees shake and your heart hesitates. It is the willingness to step forward when everything in your life has taught you to retreat. You cannot experience the fullness of God while anchored to the ground of your past. You cannot see the new thing he is doing while holding on to the old things that weigh you down. Breakthrough happens when movement begins. Some of the greatest shifts in life happen not because circumstances change, but because you change, because your steps become aligned with God's direction. You may be praying for God to open a door, but God is often waiting for you to walk toward the door before it swings open. He is waiting for your faith to meet his promise. The step doesn't have to be big. It just has to be real. It has to be forward. It has to be intentional. And it has to challenge the grip of fear that tries to convince you that where you are is as far as you'll ever go. But hear this, the enemy wants you frozen. He wants you staring at what hurt you, rehearsing what broke you, trapped in the cycles that kept you bound. Because a moving believer is a dangerous believer. When you take a step, you break the atmosphere of stagnation that the enemy uses to silence your hope. When you step, you declare that the past can inform you, but it will not imprison you. When you step, you participate in your own transformation. That step may be uncomfortable. It may be unfamiliar. It may even be misunderstood by people around you who prefer the version of you that stayed silent, stayed small, stayed predictable. But God is not calling you to comfort. He's calling you to purpose. And purpose always requires a step. Destiny never comes to those who sit and wait for the perfect moment. It comes to those who move, who risk, who obey even when the path is unclear. God honors movement. When he sees you step, he steps with you. When he sees you stretch, he strengthens you. When he sees you trust, he reveals himself in ways you never expected. That first step might look ordinary, but it carries supernatural weight. It signals to heaven that you are ready for what God has prepared. It breaks the cycle of hesitation. It opens the door for acceleration. It invites God to meet you in the place where your courage and his presence collide. Everything you dream of, everything you've prayed for, everything God has whispered to your spirit, it begins with that step. And until you take it, life remains the same. But when you do, when you finally gather your courage and step forward, you awaken the movement of God in your life. Because he moves with movers, he walks with walkers, and he transforms those who refuse to remain still. God's presence is not something you stumble into by accident. It is something you discover through obedience. There is a dimension of God you will never experience while standing in the same place, clinging to the same fears, repeating the same excuses. His presence often waits on the other side of the step you've been afraid to take. We tend to want God to reveal everything before we move. Show us the plan, show us the outcome, show us the safety net. But God rarely works that way. He reveals himself as you walk, not as you stand still. He responds to movement, to surrender, to the heart that says, Lord, I don't know how this will turn out, but I trust you enough to take the step. Obedience is not about understanding. It is about alignment. You don't obey because everything makes sense. You obey because you know God sees what you cannot see. You obey because staying where you are has become too small for the calling on your life. Obedience requires faith, and faith requires courage. Sometimes the act of stepping forward is what breaks spiritual silence. Sometimes the reason you feel far from God is not because he is distant, but because you're standing in a place he asked you to leave a long time ago. His presence flows wherever his will is followed. And when you step into obedience, you step into his nearness. The beautiful thing about obedience is that it doesn't demand perfection. God never asked you to be flawless. He asked you to be willing. Willing to move, willing to trust, willing to let go of what is holding you back, willing to walk even when the path doesn't seem fully lit. You don't have to see the entire staircase to take the first step. That first step is what activates God's direction, God's purpose, God's presence. He meets you not in the certainty of your understanding, but in the commitment of your obedience. Some of you have been praying for God's presence to fill your life, but you've been ignoring the very instruction that would open the door to it. Maybe he told you to forgive someone and you refused. Maybe he nudged you to release a habit, a relationship, a mindset that has been draining you. Maybe he has been calling you to a new level of spiritual discipline, but you keep postponing it. What you need to know is this: obedience clears the interference between you and God. Disobedience clouds the signal. His presence feels distant not because he withdrew, but because you are standing in the noise that obedience would silence. When you choose obedience, you choose clarity. When you choose obedience, you choose alignment. When you choose obedience, the weight on your shoulders begins to lift, and the voice of God becomes clearer. His presence flows like a river into the life that is submitted. You will feel him guiding your steps, whispering to your heart, strengthening your spirit. The peace you've been searching for, the joy you've been longing for, the clarity you've been desperate to find, it all begins to bloom once you position yourself in obedience. And here's the powerful part: when you obey, God doesn't just meet you, he surrounds you. He covers your weaknesses, honors your sacrifice, and responds to your faith. You begin to experience him not as a distant idea, but as an active force in your life. You start to sense him in your decisions, your conversations, your moments of stillness. His presence becomes tangible, real, alive within you. So take the step, obey the instruction, move in the direction he's been pointing toward. Because on the other side of that obedience is a level of God's presence that will transform your life forever. You cannot walk into a new season while clinging to the dead weight of the old one. Life has a way of accumulating things: disappointments, betrayals, failures, fears, regrets. And sometimes, without realizing it, we begin to drag those things with us like heavy luggage. We pray for God to elevate us, to bless us, to open doors for us, but elevation requires separation. You cannot rise while holding on to what is pulling you down. Every new level demands a new version of you, and that version cannot emerge as long as you're gripping the fragments of who you used to be. The truth is, many of us are more attached to our past than we are willing to admit. We replay memories that hurt us, revisit moments that broke us, and allow old voices to dictate our present decisions. But you cannot step into destiny while you're still listening to the echo of yesterday. God is trying to write a new chapter in your life, but you keep rereading the old one, hoping it will somehow end differently. It won't. The past is already written, but your future is still blank, waiting for a freed, focused, and faith-filled version of you to step into it. There are burdens you were never meant to carry into your next season. Some relationships have already served their purpose. Some environments have already taught you their lesson. Some habits, some mindsets, some patterns of thinking, they belong to an older version of you. And as long as you hold onto them, you stay anchored to a season God has already released you from. Every time God says move forward, the enemy whispers stay where you are, not because where you are is good, but because it is familiar. The enemy knows you will never fulfill your purpose if you remain chained to what used to be. Letting go is not weakness, it is spiritual maturity. It is the understanding that growth often requires loss. You cannot receive what God has prepared if your hands are already full. Sometimes we ask God for increase while clinging to the very things blocking our increase. Sometimes we ask for clarity while holding on to the confusion we refuse to release. Sometimes we pray for peace while embracing the chaos we won't walk away from. To step into a new season, you must surrender what no longer belongs. But releasing isn't easy. It feels like tearing. It feels like breaking. It feels like losing a part of yourself. Yet most of the time, what you are losing is the weight that has kept you from rising. God never asks you to let go of anything without having something better prepared. The pain you feel during release is temporary. The freedom you gain is eternal. When you finally let go, you create space. Space for healing, for clarity, for new opportunities, for God's presence to flow freely. You deserve to experience life unburdened. You deserve to walk into your calling without dragging the shadows of your past behind you. You deserve to feel the peace that comes when your spirit is no longer battling old wounds. But you must make the choice. You must release the bitterness. Forgive the people who hurt you. Detach from the cycles that drained you. When you do, you will feel yourself rising into alignment with what God always intended for you. Your new season is waiting. Your breakthrough is waiting. Your healing is waiting. But it cannot meet you where you used to be, only where you are willing to go. Let go of the weight. Release the old. Step forward into the freedom God designed for you. The moments when life feels the heaviest, when the pressure seems unbearable, when everything around you feels like it's pushing against you, those are often the moments when you are closest to transformation. The enemy does not waste energy on someone going nowhere. He invests his attacks where he senses destiny. If you feel resistance, if you feel pressure, if you feel the weight of spiritual warfare intensifying, it's not because you are failing. It's because you are nearing something powerful. You are approaching a breakthrough that threatens everything that has tried to bind you. Resistance is not a sign to stop. It is a sign to push. When the enemy senses you are on the verge of stepping into something God designed, he tries to distract you, discourage you, and dismantle your confidence. He uses fear to freeze you, doubt to drain you, and confusion to cloud your direction. But hear this. Pressure is the announcement that purpose is near. The darkness always fights the hardest right before the light breaks through. The enemy fights at the door of your next level, hoping you will retreat before you enter. Think about it. When you were stuck, when you were stagnant, when you weren't growing, the battles were lighter. But the moment you decided to rise, to heal, to elevate, to step into a deeper walk with God, suddenly the attacks intensified. That's not coincidence, that's confirmation. The enemy knows that if you keep moving forward, you will step into the version of yourself that cannot be manipulated, cannot be broken, cannot be stopped. So he tries to hit you with everything. Old memories, new anxieties, unexpected setbacks, relational tension, emotional exhaustion. Not because you're weak, but because you're becoming strong. The greater the transformation, the greater the resistance. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Butterflies struggle in the cocoon. Seeds must push through soil before they see the sun. You, too, must press through the resistance that surrounds your growth. God allows resistance not to destroy you, but to develop you. The battles you face are shaping your character, sharpening your discernment, strengthening your faith. You may not see it now, but you are becoming more resilient, more focused, more spiritually grounded with every attack you endure. The enemy wants you to interpret resistance as a sign that God has abandoned you. But in reality, resistance often means God is closest. He is watching, strengthening, guiding even when you don't feel it. Your struggle is not proof of God's absence. It is proof of your advancement. You are moving, shifting, growing, rising. and every force of darkness can sense it. The important thing is that you don't stop. Don't let the pressure convince you to quit. Don't let the battle convince you to retreat. Don't let the fear convince you to go back to what God already brought you out of. You have come too far, survived too much, prayed too long, grown too deeply to turn back now. The resistance you feel is the enemy's last attempt to keep you from stepping into who you were born to be. Push through, keep walking, keep believing, keep stepping forward even when it hurts, even when you're tired, even when the path feels unclear. Because beyond this resistance is victory, beyond this pressure is breakthrough. Beyond this battle is the version of you that the enemy hoped you would never become. The transformation you've been waiting for is on the other side of this fight. You're closer than you think. Keep moving. God does not reveal his greatest works in the comfort of backward glances or in the safety of standing still. He reveals himself in the motion of faith, in the forward steps you take even when you do not fully understand where those steps will lead. Too many people live trapped in the familiarity of the past, believing that because they don't know what lies ahead, they should stay where they are. But God is not found in the echo of yesterday. He is found in the courage of your next step. Backward hesitation keeps you tied to cycles, memories, and versions of yourself that no longer carry the breath of purpose. Forward motion, even when slow, places you in the direction where God's presence flows. When you hesitate, when you keep looking back, when you stay anchored to what happened, you disconnect yourself from what God is doing now. God does not meet you in the shadows of old failures. He meets you in the light of new obedience. Sometimes the reason you feel spiritually stuck is because you're facing the wrong direction. You cannot see God's next move while staring at your last mistake. You cannot walk into fresh revelation while replaying old wounds. God's presence is progressive. He calls you to move, to grow, to evolve, to step into the unknown with confidence that he is already there waiting for you. Looking backward might feel safe, but it suffocates your destiny. The past cannot sustain you. It cannot feed your spirit. It cannot speak to where you are going. When you focus on what's behind you, you strengthen the voice of fear that says, "This is as far as you'll ever go." But when you turn your heart forward, when you decide that your next step matters more than your last fall, you silence the voice of fear and give space for God to speak. Forward motion is not about speed. It is about direction. God honors your willingness to move toward his promise, even if your step is small and shaky. Think of how many miracles in Scripture required someone to move forward. Walls fell because people marched. Waters parted because feet stepped. Healing came because someone reached. Breakthrough manifested because someone dared to move. God reveals himself not to the one who waits for perfect conditions, but to the one who trusts him enough to walk into imperfect circumstances. Forward is the pathway where God unveils his power. Backward is where doubt waits to chain you, and standing still creates the illusion of safety while quietly draining your spirit of hope. You must decide which direction you will feed faith or fear. Faith pushes you forward, fear pulls you back. Faith says God is ahead of me, fear says the past is safer. But nothing about your past is safer than being in the will of God. Nothing behind you holds more power than what God has prepared in front of you. God is not calling you backward into what broke you. He is calling you forward into what will build you. Every time you move forward emotionally, spiritually, mentally, you create space for God to reveal something new, a new level of peace, a new dimension of purpose, a new depth of His presence. Forward motion positions you under the flow of heaven. It opens doors, lifts burdens, and aligns your heart with God's plan. Do not let hesitation delay what God has already declared. Do not let fear steal what faith wants to give you. Even if you don't know what the next chapter holds, trust the author. Move forward, step into God's presence, because the miracle you seek, the answer you've been praying for, the breakthrough you've been waiting on, it is not behind you. It is ahead. The step you fear the most is often the very step that carries the power to change everything. It might look small to others, it might seem insignificant in the grand picture of life, but in the spiritual realm, that single act of courage carries weight, authority, and momentum. Heaven responds to courage, not to comfort, not to hesitation, not to excuses, but to the bold decision to move when your fear is trying to hold you back. Sometimes the fear you feel is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something is shifting. It is the alarm your destiny sets off when you are nearing a moment that could alter the direction of your life. Fear rises the loudest when you are standing at the doorway of something meaningful. It tries to convince you that you're not ready, not worthy, not strong enough, not qualified. It magnifies the risk and hides the reward. It tells you to stay where you are, to remain in the familiar, to cling to what is predictable. But fear is a liar. It has one job: to keep you from the places God has prepared for you. Fear wants to paralyze you so you never discover the strength, the purpose, and the presence waiting on the other side of your obedience. The irony is that what you fear is usually much smaller than what God is trying to give you. The enemy wants to use fear as a wall, but God wants you to see it as a doorway. The hardest part is not the step itself, it's the decision to take it. Once you move, once you break the silence of your hesitation, once you push past the intimidation, you step into a flow of grace, strength, and divine assistance that you never felt while thinking about the step. God does not empower the step you dream about. He empowers the step you take. Think of how many blessings are delayed, not because God is withholding them, but because fear is convincing you that you're not ready. Think of how many ideas, opportunities, relationships, breakthroughs remain untouched because fear became your counselor. Fear has kept people out of their calling, out of their healing, out of their growth, out of their God-given identity. But when you decide to take that step, even while trembling, even while uncertain, even while unsure, that is when heaven leans in. That is when divine strength fills the spaces where your courage feels thin. That is when God shows up and says, "I can work with this." Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move anyway. And when you move, you will discover that God has already gone before you. He has already prepared the way. He has already positioned resources, people, doors, strength, and favor in the direction of your step. The moment your foot touches the ground of obedience, the atmosphere shifts. Fear begins to lose its grip. Doubt begins to lose its voice. Chains begin to break. Your spirit begins to awaken, because you were never meant to live held hostage by your fears. You were meant to stand, to walk, to grow, to rise. The step you fear might be the step that saves you from stagnation, from regret, from cycles that have worn you down, from spiritual dryness, from emotional heaviness. Sometimes all God needs is one step to change your entire life. One step can break years of hesitation. One step can open doors that have been shut. One step can reignite dreams you thought were dead. One step can bring you into a level of God's presence that you didn't even know was available to you. So take the step, not because you feel strong, but because God is strong. Not because you have all the answers, but because He is the answer. Not because the path is clear, but because the one who leads you never fails. The step you fear might be the step that frees you. And when you choose courage over fear, heaven moves with you.